I think contemporary American poetry is a revelation to a lot of young people because we've studied Frost, we've studied Tennyson, and it's somehow the next step to find out, hey, you know, there's poetry in my life as well. I don't have to write a Petrarchan sonnet. And the discovery of poets like, for example, William Carlos Williams, at least early on, for me, that was a great influence, that somehow the basic day-to-day experience was worthy of observation at that level and could be expressed in the language that we use every day. William Carlos Williams is, at least on one level, very accessible. And I think the lesson that I learned from Williams is that accessibility is really a non-issue. All poetry is inaccessible and accessible at the same time. That's, you know, that's the magic of it. Another early influence was Elizabeth Bishop, because I don't think until that moment I'd realized that pure description could yield so many surprises and discoveries, and that if you simply immerse yourself in, you know, incredible minute observation and perfect the translation into language, something else would start to come to life, and there'd be some sort of revelation that the language itself seemed to offer up. And in that sense, poetry, you know, always is bigger than the poet or the reader. And, or as a friend of mine always used to like to say, the poem is smarter than you are. And amazingly, it is. And that's a great discovery. And that's why accessibility, meaning, yes, there's a way to enter it, but what you'll discover there is always larger than anything that you can imagine or impose on it yourself. The Eastern Shore landscape, I think, is hugely inspirational to me. Ironically, because it's not terribly dramatic, it's like, I think, the kind of poetry that I write, which is very quiet and understated. And the amazing thing is the great depth that's there under that flat landscape, that flat water. It reflects so much more. I think that maybe is, again, a tribute to Elizabeth Bishop, where pure description of the world around you can reveal things that you don't know are there. And similarly, the Eastern Shore landscape, it's not cliffs, it's not, you know, raging seas, it's quiet moments, it's reflective. And it lends itself very well to a certain kind of meditative poetry, which is probably how I would describe the poems that I write. The River is a Reason is a sort of ironic title because it seems to be such a direct statement. And actually, it's not a statement, it's a question. You know, is the river a reason, or why is the river a reason? And I sort of came full circle in the collection because the final poem in the collection is called Why the River, which on some level seems to answer the question that the title asks. I live 30 feet from the Chester River, and there's no way that that does not permeate everything I do. Tides, you know, are an amazing pulse and provide a rhythm to your day. And if you live where I do, where the water's not very deep, you're always aware of the tide. I love the fact that the river goes away and then the river comes back. I mean, the river is such an amazing metaphor. There's no way that you can be immune to that, you know, as an inspiration and a muse. Poetry, though it may seem rarefied, actually serves a great purpose. It's a way of processing all experience. And it's been described by a philosopher that dreaming is an involuntary form of poetry. So if you believe in dreams and that dreams have purpose, then surely poetry similarly has purpose, as does any art form. Art is a way of processing the experience that we're dealing with, not necessarily in a narrative or linear way, but in an experiential way. And there's nothing rarefied about poetry. I don't know why more people don't discover it, but I do know that at times of crisis, following 9/11, there were an inordinate number of poems were written, and people who tried to find some way of processing their grief often found themselves reaching for poetry. I'm not sure where that urge comes from, but it's undeniably there. So I'm not worried that poetry will cease to exist, that poetry will cease to have a purpose. It's always going to have a purpose, and it's always going to offer something to anyone who looks for it.